passes the most sweeping civil rights bill ever to be written into the law, and thus reaffirms the conception of equality for all men that began with Lincoln and the Civil War 100 years ago. The Negro won his freedom then. He wins his dignity now.
With the passing of the legislation, discrimination was no longer tolerated as an acceptable normal practice. It regulated and required equality in the private and public sector. It did not eliminate racial difficulties, but it did improve life in America for minorities. The bill was passed on July 2nd, 1964, and signed into law by President Johnson.
Its purpose is not to punish. Its purpose is not to divide, but to end divisions, divisions which have lasted all too long. Its purpose is national, not regional. This Civil Rights Act is a challenge to all of us to go to work in our communities and our states, in our homes and in our hearts, to eliminate the last vestiges of injustice.
It protected the right to vote without discrimination based on race. All voters, regardless of race, are to be given the same voting application. Minorities were targeted during elections with applications that segregated them. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 led to the 1965 Voting Rights Act. It laid the foundation for future disabilities received protection from discrimination from the American Disability Act, which passed because of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Discrimination still persists today, as illustrated by differences in academic experiences, such as dropout rates, high school graduation rates, suspension rates, median household income, and incarceration stats. According to the U.S. Department of Education January 1999 report, dropout rates of African Americans aged 16 to 24 were from 20.5% in 1976 to 13% in 1996, indicating that more African American students were remaining in school. Retention in school helped contribute to improved high school graduation rates over the same time period. In 1990, about 66% of African Americans completed high school. The National School Board Association, during a 2011-2012 study, found that 1 out of 5 African Americans experienced one suspension compared to 1 out of 20 whites, non-Hispanic student suspension rates, and 1 out of 50 Asian student suspension rates. After the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, there have been improvements in student retention and high school graduation rates over time, but a difference still exists between the academic experience of African American and white students in primary and secondary grades.
Hi, I'm Dr. William Anthony Nericho. I'm a professor of English and Comparative Literature at San Diego State University, and I direct the MALIS program, the Master of Arts in Liberal Arts and Sciences. The reason there has to be this act is because human beings left to their own devices discriminate. We hate, we designate, we separate, we establish hierarchies.
One example is Condoleezza Rice, George Bush's Secretary of State, told how her father had to sit on the end of their cul-de-sac with a shotgun on his lap to protect the family from the Ku Klux Klan.
Before the act is passed, it's legal to discriminate. It's legal to build institutions that systemically act against people of color, against women. So the Civil Rights Act changed my life because I never would have gone to the University of Texas. I wouldn't have been a professor of English. I would not have been the person I am today.
According to the Census Bureau, in 2013, white median household income was $58,270, while black median household income was $34,598. And Hispanic median income was $40,963. There is a large gap between the median household of white income and black families. The Census Bureau graph of household income by race from 1967 to 2013 shows that the gap has persisted for decades. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 helped transform America into a culturally diverse country. Schools and neighborhoods are integrated with people of all cultural and ethnic backgrounds. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 gave the federal government the right to sue to force school integration. If laws were broken, then the government would take action to fight for equality in schools.
Here was the United States government actually reading the letter of the law in the Constitution and enacting legislation that made the Constitution not be hypocritical. Because before then, even the Emancipation Proclamation by Lincoln was hypocritical when it came to enforcement.
With respect to the opposition to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, groups such as the KKK and the neo-Nazis, obviously, they were not happy with it. But politicians now have come to accept and, for the most part, tolerate the bill. They try to avoid saying anything negative against it. It would be political suicide, and they would be alienating many of their voters. Almost 51 years now, I think substantial progress has been made.
The Civil Rights Act of 1964 did not eliminate racial difficulties, although it did make discrimination unlawful and improve the educational system for all.